Master learned something, so it was a good day.
Nothing changes, Dr. Edge.
So today we're going to start with the director's report as usual. And Shannon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Finley. Good morning, Commissioners. To start the director's report, in your packet you should see the field report submitted in written form as usual. I am going to give the expenditure report. Deputy Director Smith sent me with this memorandum. In your packet you have the layout of the overall expenditures, and as for the summary, revenues continue to be strong. Federal revenues are still leaning towards flat funding or reductions. Other fund spending is currently below projections. The department still expects expenditures in the last part of the biennium will be higher, but then still below budgeted amount barring unforeseen costs. So that's the overall financial report. In preparing for the 1920-21 budget, the department did submit an agency request budget on August 30th, 2018. The department is preparing to work with the Department of Administrative Services, the Chief Financial Office, to develop a governor's recommended budget, and we still expect to see that sometime around December 1st. As to audits, the Secretary of State audit of 2018 financial statement continues, as does the U.S. Department of Interior's audit on wildlife and sport restoration funds. Both of those should be completed by autumn of 2018. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Commissioners, any questions, comments? Okay. Thank you, Shannon.
On another quick note, you should have received an email from Director Melcher regarding the Commission Best Practices Survey. That email came out essentially explaining by the end of this month you'll see that survey in your email boxes. He did send along the guidance document that goes with that, and a request that if you have questions you talk to either him or Chair Finley ahead of the survey. Any questions on that one?
I want to comment on that. This is the one where sometimes as commissioners we have personal or business needs, so we miss a meeting. And the commission will engage in some activity, and then as you do the best practices sheet, and it says the commission does this, this, and this, it may have happened when you were absent. And so we've had occasions where 6 commissioners will say we do it and one will say we don't do it. And it's not because people aren't paying attention. It may be at a time, anyway, we just need to make sure that, you know, we all understand what the questions are. And if we can prove our best practices, then we'll do it. But we just need to be operating on the same playing field.
Thank you, Chair. So moving on, our next topic under the Director's Report is an update on the agenda items for the joint Washington-Oregon Commission meeting in November. Chris Kern and Tucker Jones will be coming up to present on that.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning. Chair Finley and Commissioners, for the record, Chris Kern, Deputy Fish Division Administrator, and I've got Tucker Jones, Ocean Salmon Columbia River Program Manager with me. You get both of us today because the agenda's got a few different topics on it, and I've been a little more involved in some of the discussion of the extra topics, while Tucker's here mostly on the Columbia side. So what we plan to do is we've prepared a handout for you, walk through it a little bit, and see if you have any questions. So I'll just go over the agenda real briefly, give you a little more than what's on your sheet there. I don't know if it's out yet as a final, but it's close from what I understand. I saw some email traffic yesterday to that effect. So on the Columbia River fishery management topic, which is the majority of the meeting, we expect a review of the concurrency of the policies, which you have a table, I believe, in your document that'll go over some of that, and a joint staff review. Also, Washington will be summarizing the results of their 5-year review that they've been working on during the year. And so you'll get to see that as well. There will be a topic on predation, mostly pinniped, but with also some avian and piscine predation as probably lesser discussion points, but in there. And then during that, not really predation related, but an update on the Southern Resident Killer Whale Task Force process that Washington has been engaging in. We've been involved a bit around the edges of that as well, so we'll give you an update on that. And that'll be joint staff. And then finally, the third is just an overview of guide license processes in both states. They're different, and so we'll go through sort of the licensing requirements for recreational fishing guides with a focus on the Columbia, and just highlight some of the differences between the states as well as some of the licensing history. There was a request for some of that, numbers of licenses and things like that, so we'll have some of that for you as well. And at that point, I think I'll turn it over to Tucker to handle the rest.
Right. Tucker Jones, Columbia River Program Manager. Good morning. I don't think I really need to go into a ton of detail over what's here. There's some information, sort of reviews the process that the commissions underwent as we started harvest reform, and then sort of a brief timeline going back over the last couple of years. Do want to let you know, draw your attention to the website that is listed there on your handout. You can find, I guess, all of the products that Washington has been working on over the course of this last year at that website. And then on the second page of that table, really also just want to let you know, included this mostly to show you the work that Washington has been doing over the last year. They've been meeting pretty regularly with their staff as they had some new commissioners join, and they had some questions about the policy, so they listed it out, and the staff has been working on that over the last year. The bold box is where we are now. You are here. You could write that on there if you want, I suppose. And then in a couple of weeks, we have the joint workshop meeting between the commissions. As Chris said, that agenda is mostly set. I think there are a few minor tweaks still going on there. And then once this is all over, I do want to let you know that our program and my staff are working on a fairly large compilation report. I don't expect anything new, but there's been a lot of work done over the last decade, really, that I think it's important to document. So probably expect to see that sometime in 2019, I would guess. Let's see. The third page has a table, again, as Chris said, of the concurrency issues. That's mostly for you guys to review in advance of that November 1st meeting. Though I'm happy to take any questions on it if you have right now.
I would add the box for today's briefing. You'll note on the Washington side, I'm not sure if all the commissioners are aware that they had made a schedule change. Where originally they had planned to review their document on the 15th of September, and they bumped that to the 15th of October, which is now Monday. And so what was going to be a meeting from them preceding your meeting today is now a meeting from them that comes after your meeting today. And so I just highlight that for you.
Well, this looks like a full agenda.
I think it will be a full agenda, yes.
Okay. And that was my concern when I took a position that this was a workshop and that we needed the time to really discuss with the public present, but without testimony. So Commissioner Buckmaster, you had a question or comment?
I do. First off, thank you for this. I understood that you were preparing a pretty comprehensive update or review of all of the objectives and goals that we were to see a pretty extensive review of how it's been working for the last several years. When should are we going to see that with enough time to review it before the joint meeting?
So, Chair Finley, Commissioner Buckmaster, so I think you're talking about the review that Washington's been working on
I've looked
through
at
the
the
year.
Washington review. I thought we were doing one as well.
Well, I think that may be referring to the compilation report of summary information, but that's the one I'm aware of.
And when should will we have a chance to go through that prior to?
I don't know if there'll
I don't
be a
expect-
chance before that meeting, because it wasn't intended to be I mean, it's basically, most of the information, if not all, I haven't had time to review that report or the status of the draft that's currently sitting. That contains information that was summarized in the agenda summaries like from last March. So it should be very similar information in there.
It's mostly a warehousing, I think, of all the information that's gone on in the past. It's not new information.
And I do understand that our staff has been coordinating with Washington on the analysis that they will present to you,
Okay.
so.
A couple more quick things, if you don't mind. First is, sitting on the OWEB board, I noticed that we had two proposals that were going to be voted on next week, both recommended to be approved, and I'm sure they will be, referring to the CHUM program in the Lower Columbia. And there is a technical support piece to it. There's a community support piece as we're moving forward. That is, both of those I think are focused on Big Creek and Youngs Bay, the two select areas that seem to have had the most success in the Lower Columbia. So if we're moving forward and putting all of our eggs in a couple baskets, and we're looking at the potential of an extensive trum restoration project within those two areas, it may have a significant impact on the Lower Columbia commercial fishing community. So with that in mind, I will probably ask that question at the joint meeting, and what you see as the implications of that to the plan. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on it.
Appreciate that.
And, evidently, and both of those things are working with the ODFW, so I assume you're aware of them,
Well,
which may be a bad assumption.
Commissioner Buckmaster, I might not be aware of them just because it tends to be in a different box. Tucker may know something about it that I don't, but.
Commissioner Buckmaster, Chair Finley. Not aware of those specific proposals, but I do know the CHUM reintroduction coordinator works out of Clackamas. I speak with her actually pretty regularly, Dr. Hummel, Chris. She's been doing a lot of work in the Clatskanai, and then looking also, the hatchery work in Big Creek and also in Big Creek itself. And then there's some, I've been aware of work that they've been looking at in the Lewis and Clark as a potential area for chum restoration. But I'm not.
It says Youngs Bay in the document that OWEB's going to approve. Okay. And my last piece for you is more of a housekeeping for an immediate need. There is still, although it's getting pretty iffy, a chance that we could have a tangle net opening in the main stem for coho within the next, I think we only have like another week where it could happen. I don't know what other things, I know steelhead, some other issues, what we talk about, but is that something you guys are considering?
Chair Finley, Commissioner Buckmaster, we would love to get all of the lower river fisheries back open. The tanglenet fishery and the maybe buoy 10 coho. I'm not sure that that's going to happen. We are, still looking at where numbers are going to come in. And right now the limiters are not steelhead, actually, I don't think. They're fall chinook and those upriver bright fall chinook, which are a surrogate, I guess, not to get too wonky for the Snake River wilds. And if things ended today, right, we would be over our non-treaty impacts. Right. And so when you're sitting over the top, if you are going to even impact one additional chinook, you can't go fishing. And with the numbers still at 300, 400, 600, 700 fish over Bonneville Dam every day, and all of those are presumably bright, hard to basically say that we're not going to intercept any chinook in those fisheries. And that's the unfortunate fact of the matter at this point in time.
Well, if we do find the opportunity, and I realize it's a long shot, and we do have user groups, if one is a couple 100% over their allocation and one is still under their allocation, let's take that into consideration.
Yeah,
So
Commissioner.
we'll keep an eye on
Yeah.
that, and if we can, we will.
That's all I have.
Commissioner Aikenson.
I understand that the comprehensive report that you're planning to put together on the long-term results of the Columbia River fisheries reform isn't going to be done until next year. But I would be interested in having even just a summary, a qualitative summary of how things worked in the last 5 years, just, generally, the number of fish that we had in production was similar or not similar, the returns were different, what happened with the fisheries, just something that's simple, and I think we all sort of know what those things are, but just as a one-page reminder to us of what went well and what didn't go well, without all the details.
I think Commissioner Aikenson, Chair Finley, I think we could pull some stuff from the March agenda item where we have, covered things for, I guess, that would have been 2017 through 17, and of course in 17 we did a pretty large and comprehensive review of the transition period. So yeah, we should be able to pull that stuff together.
Okay, that'd be a good comparison with the Washington perspective, even though it sounds like they're a lot more detailed. I think for me, the qualitative information is just as valuable at this point. The second point I had was on concurrence. Could we add temperature-related fisheries management, because that's an upcoming topic for next year and the future related to thermal sanctuaries?
Yeah, Commissioner Aikenson, there's probably a couple ways we could do that. The table you see before here in the concurrence discussion we had anticipated so far is mostly about the rule for the Oregon Commission and the policy for Washington Commission, which sort of predate our discussions of the temperature. And so there's an option that we could flag that, or it also could be something that, the way the agenda is shaping up is a couple hours in the morning with a break and a couple more hours after lunch, and maybe some breaks in between, with a lot of time for the commissioners to discuss with each other. So that's an option as well. We can do either way, whatever you prefer. If you'd like us to tee it up as a piece of content on the outline that we work off of, we can certainly do that.
I think it would be beneficial for us to have the expertise of staff to provide us kind of a
Yeah.
background.
Tee it up on the.
We can do that.
I agree.
Commissioner Aikinson's right. We know some of these things over the span of the years. We just can't remember.
I didn't say it that way.
Well, she meant it when she looked at me.
They were burned indelibly, but yes, we can certainly do that.
One other thing, as you work with Washington staff, maybe like a week before the November 1st meeting, give us the delta. What are the differences that you think there's divergence where we wouldn't have concurrence?
Between the two states' policies?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because you'll be
Yes.
working with them and, you'll be working for concurrence, but I'd like to know what the outliers are.
Yeah, Chair Finley, brings up a good point. My understanding, we will certainly keep our eyes on that. I've been trying to do that all along anyway, as I'm sure the rest of our staff have. My understanding of Washington staff's approach is that they were asked to provide a summary document without recommendations. And so I don't expect their document to propose specific adaptive measures. In fact, I think it says it won't. If there are, we'll certainly keep an eye on them. Otherwise, I think we'll be going off of the sort of what we know right now in terms of where the policies stand absent any change, and then leave that for discussion. But we can, if we see them, we can point them out for you, sure.
So one delta right away is no adaptive management, huh?
That's one.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that.
A small one.
All right. Commissioners, any more questions? Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Up next is public forum. We did have one person sign up ahead of the meeting for public forum. It's Mr. Ammer. I do not see him in the room, I believe.
Going once, going twice, gone.
Very good.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
when we finish with the director's report and before we start the rest of our agenda, I have an issue I'd like to
Okay,
bring before the commission.
okay.
Good. Okay, last item under director's report is adoption of temporary rules. In your TAN handout, you have 12 rules that the agency has proposed and currently has under the temporary rule allocation. So are there any questions, comments, concerns related to those 12 rules?
I don't see any commissioners have any issues with the temporary rules?
I would move to approve the 12 temporary rules set forth in the TAN agenda.
I second that.
It's been moved by Commissioner Weber, seconded by Commissioner Aikenson to approve the adoption of temporary rules. Any other discussion or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously by the 5 commissioners present. By the way, I forgot to mention for the record, Commissioner Woolley is engaged in personal family business and is excused. All right. Well, thank you. That finishes the director's report. Commissioner Buckmaster, you had something you wanted to bring up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Within the last week or so, I received a newsletter from the Western Rivers Conservancy Group. They work with all across western states on river projects. This one focused on work they were doing in Washington, Idaho, Colorado, a couple in Washington. But I was particularly taken by one that they have completed in Oregon. It's 30 Mile Creek on the John Day. They finished the purchase of about 3,000 acres portion of the Campbell Ranch. That couples with an earlier ranch purchase they made, which basically opens up in the 30 Mile area 75,000 recreational access acres of BLM land. That access is important to hunters, hikers, recreationists. It's a phenomenal job. They're in the process of dealing with ownership transfer. It opens up, gives us much more access to the 70-mile stretch. So as I'm reading that and smiling and thinking what a wonderful thing that is, I thought, well, that is an action that has been taken that is totally consistent with the mission of the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and the personal missions of, I believe, all of our commissioners. And I prepared I thought what I would do was come today, mention that, and ask if we would, with the concurrence of my colleagues, prepare a letter of appreciation and acknowledgement of that action to send to the Western Rivers Conservancy. But the more I thought about it, I realized that this is the type of action that is going on across Oregon by individuals, by families, by organizations that are deserving of acknowledgement and appreciation. We do not have a process or a program at the commission that really supports that sort of a acknowledgement process. So I would propose, again with concurrence of my colleagues, that we consider and maybe begin putting together some sort of a program that commissioners can bring forth a recommendation to acknowledge. And it probably needs a name, it probably needs something nice. And I'm not talking about anything more than a certificate of appreciation and acknowledgement. I mean, we can call it a mission stewardship award, we can call it, but something from the commission. I would propose that it needs to be a unanimous decision by the commission to offer one of these and something to move forward. So if the chair, if there's other comments, I think that I would ask that I be allowed to go forward working with staff, maybe I need, or work with appropriate staff to come up with some sort of a framework on how that might be done to bring back to the commission at our next meeting, and that I propose Western Rivers and the John Day program as being the first recipient of that nascent award.
Any discussion, commissioners?
I think it would be a good program to initiate.
Commissioner
Favor
Aikenson?
as well.
Okay. Commissioner Biddle?
Yeah, I totally
He agreed.
Did you come up?
Okay. Well, I agree. So we have a unanimous agreement, Commissioner Buckmaster. So if you'll undertake that, we'll all be waiting and want to support you.
Director Kern, will you help me with that?
Chair Finley, Commissioner Buckmaster, yes, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
That sounds like a great idea. We'd love to help you with that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bruce. Okay. Exhibit A. As I was reading the commission meeting, I realized that I wasn't at that meeting. So, but I did see that I was excused. So, steelhead fishing in British Columbia does have its priorities. So let's approve the minutes. Anyone see anything in the minutes that need to be corrected? Congratulations, Michelle. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes for the September 14, 2018 commission meeting.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Aikenson and seconded by Commissioner Biddle. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously by the 5 commissioners present. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to Exhibit B, which is deferred. That was destruction of forfeited firearms from wildlife law violations, and we will bring that up again. But, Anna, why did we defer that?
Chair Finley, we did have a lot of folks that wanted to come and testify today, and we haven't really teed this one up in a way that provided that opportunity, except for doing it right here. So we wanted to give both sides an opportunity to discuss that. It is currently a temporary rule. It expires in December. We're still discussing whether we would let that temporary rule lapse or whether we would try and have those discussions in a timely manner in order to bring it forward in December.
Okay. All right. Then we'll skip the executive session for right now and move on to Exhibit C, Anderson property purchase. The commission will be asked to approve the purchase of 214 acres in Klamath County adjacent to the Klamath Wildlife Area. We toured that yesterday.
Yeah, but I was thinking we were gonna have the executive session prior to that.
Is that right?
Yeah, Chair Finley, Commissioner Weber, we were planning that originally. We're okay with deferring to you guys if you don't feel you want to talk about the acquisitions in executive session ahead of hearing about them. We do have one other topic we want to take up at executive session with you.
So there were some questions about the acquisitions that I had that were appropriate for executive session.
Yeah. Then I think it's a good idea. Maybe.
Okay. Well then, do we have a room for executive session? Where we had breakfast?
Breakfast room.
Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, we are going to, it won't be too long, but it could be a half hour to 45 minutes. So embrace the coffee pot. And then we'll come back and talk about 3 properties? Just 2. 2 properties. And our executive session will be germane to acquisition. It usually involves price negotiations and some other background things that are usually done in executive session. Okay, so Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission will meet in executive session. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.660, parens 2, parens E, ORS 192.660, parens 2, parens F, and ORS 192.660, parens 2, parens H, which allow the commission to meet in executive session to deliberate with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions, to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection, and to consult with legal counsel with respect to litigation filed or likely to be filed against the commission. Representative of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we'll return to open public meeting and welcome the audience back to resume the meeting. We're going into executive session in the next room, and we'll be back as soon as we can.